They keep coming back. Don't you see? Every time I negotiate, I try to understand. Well, not today. No, today I honour the victims first. His, the Masters, the Daleks, all the people who died because of my mercy. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Series 7 story, The Town Called Mercy, written by Toby Whitehouse and is directed by Sal Metzstein. We'll also slightly be talking about the prequel episode, The Making of a Gunslinger, written by Toby Whitehouse and is directed by Neil Gordon. And this is the first time Doctor Who has done a Western since way back in the 60s with the first Doctor story, The Gunfighters. So that's a massive gap for a type of genre. It's the first time Doctor Who's done it on televised Doctor Who. Of course, there have been Westerns in comics, in audio dramas, in novels, but this is the first time Doctor Who has come back to this particular style of storytelling since the first Doctor in terms of televised stories. So it had a bit of a excitement about it. A lot of people, I remember when this story was being promoted, was one that a lot of people were excited about. Doctor Who doing a Western. But there is a reason why Doctor Who and many other franchises have stopped doing Westerns for a while. And that's mainly because back in the 60s when there was the whole space race going on, people got more excited about space than they did about the Old West. That was a big factor, but also as well, in terms of actually making a Western, it became a lot harder to pull it off, essentially. A lot of, usually in these Westerns, you have these small villages, only like a few buildings, surrounded by a desert. In most locations, like in this story as well, it's just part of the trope of the Western storylines. And what happened is because of higher technology and greater production values, these kinds of sets started to look exactly like they are sets. So what you need to do is get a really strong and competent director to visualize the scenery. This story was actually filmed in Spain, where a lot of Westerns were filmed to try and capture that Western feel. Also as well, this is the first story in the revival era where the visual effects company, The Mill, weren't responsible for the majority of the special effects. Which is why in the credits, the visual effects team is credited for the space effects, I believe the company was called. So that's kind of interesting. And so, yeah, there was a lot of hype about the story. It also has starred Andrew Brookie, who is Karen Gillan's real-life boyfriend at the time. I don't know if they're still dating or whatever. I'm not really keen on, like, celebrity drama and stuff. But at the time, anyway, I knew that they were dating. So a lot of people were excited to see what he had to bring to the table, where he was playing the main villain of the story, essentially. And so let's get into the prequel episode first. Essentially, in the prequel episode, we hear about the creation of the Kala Scientific Reserve, and they talk about how during this war, this alien race are in a war where they've decided that they're going to take soldiers who are in perfect peak health and convert them into killer cyborgs, hell-bent on just destroying anybody that they're fighting against. They've told their soldiers that they are going for peacekeeping missions. However, when the cyborgs were implanted with cybernetic enhancements, they were basically programmed to basically take on the most deadliest, most ruthless of missions, which we later learn in the main episode that is something that the Kala are really despised because of they have a certain religion, and how you treat people in your life, it will affect you as you die when you're in the afterlife. So yeah, but that's in the main episode. But for now, we just see, basically we have this monologue where we see Kala Tech being converted into this cyborg, essentially like a Cyberman, where they can make peak condition to a sense, made them into a killer warrior persona, and that's basically it for the prequel. In terms of its own little scenery, I think this is actually a really strong prequel. You know, there's a lot of great shots. There's a lot of the monologue is a really cool monologue, and it puts you in this atmosphere. It helps with the world building of this culture, this society, and it makes you feel the presence of Kalatek, the main villain of the main story. However, in terms of it being an actual prequel to the episode, this actually might be one you might want to avoid unless you've already seen the episode before, because what happens is that this kind of spoils a part of the story in a way, because when we go into the story, part of the mystery is what happens to why is this cyborg going after its people and stuff, and in the prequel we basically learn this, which is part of the mystery for the first half of the episode. So I actually recommend that you watch it after and you get a better context of what the story is about, rather than watching it beforehand and having that mystery. It's not exactly spoiled. It's not stated outright that that's what the cyborg, the gunslinger, is after, but you do kind of pick up more of the hints, more of the what the story's trying to say with that prequel. So I would personally try to avoid it. But anyway, on its own, it's a pretty good, decent prequel. I, again, recommend you watch it if you enjoyed this episode and if you've seen it. But not if you haven't seen it and you want something to like build up, pump yourself up for the main episode, which is what I like to do with the prequel episodes, usually. But let's get into the main episode itself. Now, chronologically wise, this is a bit on the confusing state, because the story starts off with the Doctor, Amy and Rory coming into this town called Mercy, which has been bordered by a line of rocks and stones with a sign saying "Keep Out." And the Doctor, Amy and Rory just walk in, with the Doctor being overconfident, and the first thing that gets off right off the bat, which is so cool, the Western. Like I said earlier, the Western is a franchise which is really hard to nail down visually without it looking like a cheap set. Now, despite the fact that the story in terms of the city only has a few hand-shot scenes of the outside, it does have a lot of scenes on the outside, but in terms of the actual village, we don't see a lot of it. But the director, Sal Metzstein, really makes you feel like you're in a classic Western. You do not get the presence that this is a cheap set. You get the idea that the Doctor, Amy and Rory have actually travelled back to the Westerns and are now living into this environment. So that is really cool, absolutely nailed it. But again, in terms of continuity, this is a bit of a strange one, because in the story the Doctor states that Rory left his phone charger in Henry VIII's time when they met Henry VIII. This actually means that this story is actually set during the next story in the air date, The Power of Three. I've decided to tackle it this way in the air date because it's much more simpler. But that means from the Doctor's point of view, The Power of Three, The Town Called Mercy, and one episode of Pond Life, all set at the same time. So, I just found it pretty interesting to talk about. But, so yeah, this story actually takes place during the slow invasion of that story, which is really strange. And it really muggles the confrontation in this episode. I'll get on to a little bit about that. And essentially, the Doctor, Amy and Rory, they get into the village, they meet some of the villagers, and when they discover he's the Doctor, they ask if he's an alien, and when they discover he's an alien, they all grab him and just throw him out of the line and put a gun on him to try and keep him out of the village. Whilst the Doctor's waiting, you see a figure teleporting out from the distance, teleporting closer and closer to the Doctor. And this is the main villain of the story, the Gunslinger, Kalatek. And so, first of all, it seems like everybody who goes outside this barrier is automatically targeted to be a victim of the Gunslinger. He's basically boarded this city up. According to some of the civilians, they woke up one night, the border was there, and then everybody who tries to escape, anybody coming in with food or with rations, is quickly like averted or killed or whatever. And essentially the doctor, Amy and Rory were let in because they didn't bring anything with them. So it's basically more mouths to feed than a starving. And the Gunslinger has also claimed that he wants the alien doctor. However, the sheriff then gets involved and tells the doctor to come back in. And he states to the villagers that we already know who he's after. It's not this doctor. And so the sheriff then takes the doctor, Amy and Rory, to his station, and the doctor quickly learns that there is another alien doctor here, an actual doctor, Jack, played by Andred Scarborn, who you might know. He's a big famous comedian actor. He's done a lot of episodes in sitcoms here and there. I keep thinking he's in Harry Potter. He is not in Harry Potter as far as I'm aware. I don't know why I keep going in my head that he plays a character in Harry Potter, but he does not. And this is where then the main focus of the episode is who is the Gunslinger? Why is he coming after Jex, the alien doctor? And will the village keep intact as they basically are rationed? They're basically starving, and as the tension rises. Now, good on job for Toby Whitehouse for tackling such a serious and, well, not serious, but tackling this kind of subject, because this story is all about moral high ground. It's a complete opposite to the previous episode of Dinosaur in a Spaceship, which basically just says, hey, try to enjoy me. This episode is going, right, we have this dilemma, this moral dilemma, where we have this brutal alien force who's just after this one guy. He won't kill anyone else, but he wants to kill this one guy. For at the moment, we don't actually know why. And this guy that we meet seems to be a really nice, lovable lad. In fact, everybody in the town gets along with him prior to this event, and he's actually helped people with their illnesses. He's cured many of the illnesses in the village. And when this doctor then discovered about the border, he actually tied the electrical system with his own ship and made some rudimentary technology, which is why we see a lamppost with an electric light 10 years too early. And so that's also kind of like one of the mysteries of the story at the start, which then reveals to be, of course, Jex. And so the Doctor comes up with actually kind of a simple plan. He basically plans to, we're not really curious about what's going on here. We just want to get the TARDIS, come over here. We'll take everybody where they want to go outside the village, because the TARDIS can teleport like that, dematerialize. So that's the main grit of the story, and I love how Jax at the start of the story seems like a really nice, lovely lad. He's got such an innocent persona about him, which it might be a bit too nice, a bit too kind, and we will later learn to see why. And essentially what happens is the Doctor, he creates a distraction, and he with Rory and the sheriff, and the Doctor goes out. He's going for his TARDIS. However, he discovers Jex's ship, and he uses its data logs, using its personal files on Jex to discover why the Gunslinger is after him. And we quickly learn that Jex is actually he's a kind of a war hero in a sense, by basically, as it's stated in the prequel, they took innocent soldiers, people who are only wanting to do peacekeeping missions, and turned them into killing cyborgs who have ruthlessly destroyed everybody. And essentially, after the war was done, all the cyborgs were essentially decommissioned, burnt out and died. However, one seemed to have survived and is going on basically a revenge scheme, going around killing everybody that that did him wrong, basically getting its revenge. And that's what Kalatek wants with the Doctor. When he meets up with Kalatek, he's like, don't shoot me, I know what he's done, I know the pain, the suffering he has caused, to which Kalatek is just like, bring him to me and nobody else will be harmed. And then he teleports off. So the Doctor comes back, and when because the Doctor accidentally sent out a distress signal when he opened the ship, and this put Jex in a situation where he's like, that's not part of the plan, and he quickly discovers that the Doctor might have learned about his secret, and so he hells Amy Pond at one point. Now, I just want to state as well, there is a scene in this story in which Jex and Amy Pond are talking, and it ruins everything that Stephen Moffat tried to set up in Asylum of the Daleks, in which he basically proclaims to Amy that, you know, I can see it in your eyes, you're a mother, you have that kindness, that sweetheartedness, but there's also that ferocity that only a mother can have, to which Amy's just like, it's not exactly straightforward, but Jex kind of gets that relationship that, you know, she is a mother, she has that motherly instinct because she has kind of in a way been a mother to River Song whilst learning about the baby. So in this story, it is completely content that Amy anyway is a mother. So again, completely ruined by the fact that Asylum of the Daleks happened. The fact that Asylum of the Daleks happened prior to the story means this scene, this emotional hook at that scene, is completely ruined and is completely just goes against everything that story stands for when it comes to Amy and Rory's relationship. However, if you take that terrible plot, that subplot in that story out, then this story, that scene is actually a really nice little character beat for our characters. But then Jax puts a gun on Amy, to which the sheriff finds out, and the Doctor then quickly comes in and becomes really aggressive. And I love the difference between the Doctor he loves the Kal as a magnificently scientifically advanced species. When the Doctor first meets Jax, he's like shaking his hand constantly and is just fused with excitement. However, after when the Doctor has learned what has happened, the Doctor gets really into his face, tells him, basically shouts at him to sit down, and the Doctor, at this point, he just doesn't know what to do, whether to sacrifice Jet to Kalatek, or to try and find a way to stop Kalatek, to destroy Kalatek in a way where the city and most people then are safe. Whilst the sheriff is like, well, we got to protect the Doctor, you know, he's our friend, he's helped us in the past so many times. There's a reason this town is called Mercy. America is a land of second opportunities. Sure, he might have done horrible, disgusting things in the past, but that's in the past, and this place, this village is for giving people a second chance. But Amy, on the other hand, is like, and Amy as well, I think, Amy is kind of like, she's like in between. She is the yin. You got the id ego, the super ego. She is the id in this story, where she's like kind of confrontational about it in a bit. And same with the Doctor in this scene. However, Rory, really out of character, is the one that, he doesn't like suggest it, but he basically lets the Doctor chuck Jex out. And he actually stops Amy at one point, holding a door, and when Amy is just like, are you seriously going to let him do this? Rory's like, what, help save us? Yes. Rory, what the hell? That is so out of character for you. Why does this not get mentioned? I've watched like a bunch of reviews on this story. Nobody mentions the fact that Rory is so out of character in this story. And that's all really Rory does in this story. He the companions here are really useless, especially with only the exception of one scene with Amy, which we'll get onto. But the companions felt really unnecessary in the story, and the fact that at this point in the canon of Doctor Who, Amy and Rory aren't technically companions. I mean, they still are in terms of us, the viewing audience, but it has been stated within the series that Amy and Rory only come on whenever, every few, often. Most of the time they spend their life at home living normal day lives, whilst the Doctor picks them up on a few occasions to have adventures with. And that means that for an audience member, when every episode, even ones where they're not really necessary, with the exception of one scene, it means that we as an audience member don't really feel that loss of companionship. They still feel like main companions to us as a viewing audience, which does go against the massive scene and the scene that Amy is actually here for. But before that, let's talk about why the Doctor chucked Jex out. Jex suddenly becomes this almost ruthless character who seems not only proud at the fact that he created these cyborgs, but he almost gulges in it, which at this point in the story, Jex becomes extremely out of focus. And in terms of writing anyway, and if you took the story purely by writing, his character really doesn't make sense. We get scenes with him where he seems really proud, he seems very in your face with the fact that he's created these cyborgs and created peace after a 9-year war, under a week due to this cyborg program. And he seems to be almost it's like, you want me to apologize for that? No, I'm not going to apologize for saving millions of lives. Sure, this guy might have had I might have completely ruined and scarred this person mentally and physically and done it to 100 other soldiers, but that doesn't matter. I'm absolutely proud of the fact that I have saved so many lives. And he's kind of like, almost like the villain of the story. But then in other scenes, we basically learned that the Kala, their religion, basically states that in the afterlife, they're going to have, I can't remember what the story is, but basically they're going to carry the burden of all the people they have wronged in their life. And it turns out then he does actually want to live, and he does actually feel pity and remorse for Karla Tech, and that he does actually feel guilty for all the crimes he had committed during wartime. And the character keeps flopping between these two extremely different polar ends of this kind of character, and even the character basically points us out at one point where he says, it would be much more simple if I was one thing. If I was the kind-hearted doctor who saved the village, or the war criminal the war hero who experimented on and tortured millions of innocent soldiers to make them into killing death machines, being the cause of many, many innocent deaths throughout this deadly war. And so, but the character himself feels like he's got split personality disorder to that degree. However, Adrian Scarbourne does a fantastic job, in my opinion, at balancing out. Sure, he plays both versions of the character in the way they are scripted, where there is that proudness in one version, but then there is that kind of regretfulness in certain scenes. However, his performance really keeps this underlying beat underneath it, which means that the character doesn't feel out of character in terms of purely his performance. But the Doctor, he does a speech to the Doctor in which basically he states this as like, the Doctor, he's basically this coward. He's seen that the Doctor has also been in certain kind of wars, but he didn't have the guts, he didn't have the nerve to do what Jex had done. And then one line he says, thank God my people didn't count on you to save them, to which the Doctor gets so aggressively angry to this that he basically tells Jex to get up, and he starts pushing him out of the border, and actually takes somebody's gun and starts basically holding him at ransom to Kalatek, to let Kalatek have him. And that's really like a big deal for the Doctor's character. You know, the Doctor has never really let somebody die in this ferocity. Sure, he let Solomon die in the last episode, but Solomon was clearly guilty, and not only that, had no remorse, had not learned a single thing during his time. This story kind of implies that he knows that he needs a second chance. He knows, in a way, and the Doctor has basically given up on saving this guy to the point where he will physically push and hurl a gun at someone, to which Amy then fires a gun to catch everyone's attention, and the Doctor basically states that, you know what, this time I'm putting the victims first. Kalatek is his victim. This time I am not going to let my mercy, let my mindset go through. This is it. I'm putting the victims first. The victim can have the tortured. Let him deal with it, and we can solve this problem straight away. You know, Jex in certain degrees deserves the justice that's coming for him. To which Amy gives this really, let's be honest, half-assed line. I don't know if it was Karen Gillan at the time, or Toby Whitehouse just having such little, like it's literally just a line where Amy's just like, Doctor, come on, we got to be better than this. And then the Doctor's just like, yes, okay, fine, get back over this side of the line. And that's it. That's the emotional hook. That's the reason Amy's in this story. She basically states as well at one point that, is this what happens when you're alone, when you don't have companions, when you don't have friends? However, like I state, as an audience member, we don't really feel this because Amy and Rory have been, in every single story, been the main companions of the story, except for two, in recent memory, which is the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe, and Closing Time. However, for Series 7, kicking back, this is the third story, and they've been companions, they've been friends in all of them. And as an audience member, we don't really feel that the Doctor would have turned on such an aggressive nature because he hasn't got companions at this time. It's not like in the specials in 2009, the Doctor chose his moral compass. Basically, at that time, was stating not to travel with anybody. He puts him in harm's way. The Doctor is still, in a sense, travelling with Amy and Rory. He just takes breaks from their point of view. Whether the Doctor actually goes back as soon as, or whether he just, like, for him it's like a day, or maybe it's a week or a month. We actually, as an audience member, don't really know or connect with this struggle. However, I will state, however, the idea of the Doctor becoming a little bit more darker in recent memories, I do kind of feel there is a precedent for that. Like, example, he did let Solomon die in not Death and Doctor, what am I on about? Dinosaurs in a Spaceship. And though nothing like that happens in Asylum of the Daleks, there is that scene where where Oswald basically explains to the Doctor that the Daleks' fear of the Doctor is what made them stronger. So there is that kind of recurring theme within Series 7, which does kind of work. However, what really ruins it is the fact that Amy's just like, come on, Doctor, we got to be better than this. Okay, I'm better than this. Come on, Jex. And it's something the Doctor should really already know at this point. It's something that the Doctor's... It seems really out of character for the Doctor, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. I don't think Toby Whitehouse really gets the 11th Doctor. This is a story which should have seemed to easily fit a 9th and 10th Doctor that kind of almost pushed it to the barrier, because you have that weight of the Time War recently on their soldier. But with the 11th Doctor, you don't really feel that grip. And it just doesn't really ring true. But we then get this really intense scene where Kalatek is literally at gunpoint to Jex. he could kill him there and then. However, the doctor, Carla Tex does actually shoot. I do apologise, my memory's a bit fuzzy. And the sheriff pushes Jex out of the way, and he takes the gunshot, and he makes the doctor into the sheriff. Now, before we get into the rest of the story, let's talk about the side characters. This story has a lot of side characters, and if this is one thing that everybody can agree on within this story, it deserves to be two-parters, because there are so many characters who seemingly are more important than they actually are. We have these cliched stereotype characters for a Western, which is, nice. You get the Undertaker, you've got the young teenager who was too young to remember war, but he's got that ambition about him. You have the sheriff, you have the preacher, you have the young girl that witnesses everything, and she has the mindset. She just is the witness to all this chaos, and the impression is that she will grow up to see the world like this. You see a prostitute at one point. However, I can't remember a single thing about them, despite the fact that the sheriff is actually one of the biggest supporting cast members. And there's a scene where the teenager, he basically confronts the doctor who after becoming the sheriff, and is just like, right, doctor, we have no hard feelings on Jex, on the doctor as they call him, because he is the local doctor, and we have no hard feelings about him. We really feel really bad about this. However, we've all got families, we're all starving, we all got mouths to feed, and we just want to let him go and just get on our way. And the doctor basically has this scene very similar to the Seventh Doctor scene in the Happiness Patrol, where he basically convinced the guy to drop their guns. Essentially a similar scene with the 11th Doctor, which I actually really like. However, I really like it from the 11th Doctor's point of view, where he basically convinces, violence creates more violence. This is not the way to solve it. This is not the way to resolve this issue. If you let Jex go, then maybe next time you let more innocent people go, and keep on doing it until basically you are the main villain in a sense. However, again, that teenager character doesn't hold any weight in this scene, and that's one of the main factors, is that none of the side characters in this story are memorable. In fact, the story starts off in the pre-credit sequence where we see Carla Tech killing one of the scientists in the desert. You have this speech by this woman, this narrator, who was basically like, back in my old days, you had the gunslingers and all that, which is kind of something which Westerns don't usually do. However, it is like it is a trope that some Westerns do this monologue by one of the female characters to get the Western feeling. However, we then later learn, right at the end of the episode, kind of a spoiler warning, that the woman who does the monologue doesn't appear throughout the story ever again until the very end, where we essentially learn it is the granddaughter of the girl who was in the village at the time. What? Are you kidding me? I thought it was going to be the hooker, the bartender in the story. The one we see, like the doctor, she helps the doctor paint Jex's tattoo, which Carla Tech uses to identify Jex, as Jex basically is like, tomorrow morning I'm going to come through that border, I'm going to come through that line, I'm going to come into Jex, and anybody who stands in my way will die. Which goes against a line in the story which states that he is only programmed to kill people, innocent people, if only absolutely necessary. Actually, I kind of like that scene. Actually, that kind of worked, because he does kind of feel like he absolutely needs to get Jex. However, there are scenes, especially earlier on, as I stated, Rory and the sheriff were used as a distraction so the doctor can get to the TARDIS. In that distraction scene, Carla Jex was there's a scene in which Carla Tex was easily about to kill Rory and the sheriff. If it wasn't for the fact that the alarm system on Jex's ship went off, he would have killed Rory and the sheriff. So that goes against that, and there's a lot of plot holes in the story like that. But the ending, I actually really like. You got that Mexican standoff where everything just goes quiet, every hands on waists, as our characters are basically staring each other down at a distance. You got, that really, the standoff, the Western standoff. And you think the Doctor's going to pull a gun, but in fact he pulls a sonic screwdriver, which messes up all the electrical equipment there. I presume it messes up Karlatek's system as well, because he does struggle to find Jex, and but his low automatic system seem to be intact, as he can track down the Doctor with ease to a certain degree. To which the Doctor's come up with this plan that he basically has everybody dress up like Karlatek and have the same tattoo, and have them running around distracting Karlatek, while Jex goes to his ship and escape. And then when he escapes, the Doctor can be like, right, Jex isn't here, he's gone, you can take your bloody revenge scheme, you can take it off world, you don't have to harm any of these people, basically, essentially saving the day. And I do really love that costume the 11th Doctor has, where he's dressed up like Jex. He has that green coat, not the same green coat he wore in Series 6B, but it has that like velvety kind of appeal, and the Doctor has like a half-finished tattoo, as he didn't get his finished. But I don't know, I thought that was a really cool look. It's only like for like a minute or two, but I would love to see a figure of that one day. Oh, a figure of Karlatek would be so cool as well. Character options, or whoever does the figurines, go and make that. I think a lot of fans would be happy with that. And so, the story essentially ends with Jex. He's in his shape, but however, and the Doctor basically states to Karlatek, is like, right, he's going, he's not here anymore, he's gone to his ship, you go and take your revenge scheme somewhere else, take it away from all of these innocent people. But then Jex actually gets on the communication system and is like, right, Jex, I'm going to save everybody, including yourself here, as I'm basically setting my ship up to self-destruct, so you don't have to kill me. The weight of my death will not be on your shoulders, won't be there when you pass into the afterlife. And hopefully with me, I sacrificing myself like this, the spirits that I've wronged will be kind to me. And so he self-destructs, and then Karlatek is like, right, I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to self-destruct somewhere where nobody will get hurt. As peacetime has arrived, there's no more war. But then the Doctor gives him an idea to essentially stay along to keep the village of Mercy safe and protect basically the concept of peace, as Karlatek becomes essentially the new sheriff of Mercy. And that is how the story ends. And that is a town called Mercy. Overall, there's a lot of issues here, especially in the writing department. There's some plot holes, some convenient moments. There's Rory and the Doctor seemingly acting way out of character. The side characters, for the most part, are uninteresting, dull, and unmemorable, with the exceptions of Jex and the main villain, Karlatek. The moral compass is completely skewed, completely complicated by the fact that Jex keeps changing the type of character he is, and we don't really get a good grasp of him in terms of a writing standpoint. However, there is also a lot to like here. Matt Smith's performance is always amazing to watch. Adrian Scarbourne is fantastic. Andrew Brookie is brilliant as Karlatek, and was a real highlight in this story. The directing by Sal Metzstein is easily the best thing about this story. There are so many great shots, there's so much great atmosphere, and as I've stated in my last two previous videos, Series 7 was the series which was designed to have the title and the movie poster first, and then the story second, and the stories were all basically built as a theatrical movie style narrative, and McEdam really gets that here, and obviously in his previous story, dinosaurs in the spaceship, and so he is easily becoming like a really one of my favorite directors of Series 7 so far. Really, just round of applause, because this story, I think, without him, would have easily been ranked as one of the worst stories in the 11th Doctor era, if not easily the worst in Series 7. However, purely because of him. Actually, I tell a lie. Asylum of the Daleks would have easily hold that record, but if it wasn't for these directors that Series 7 have, and the actors that this series have, really just puts it on form. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it does a really good job at getting that movie style feeling. It's just the script on its pure own. Like, if this was a novel, it would have fallen completely flat. But yeah, that's A Town Called Mercy. So join me next time, A Town Called Mercy and its prequel episode, The Makings of the Gunslinger. So join me next time when the Doctor has to do something he's incredibly bad of. One of his worst traits, patience, as it's the attack of the slow invasions, as these black cubes seem to appear everywhere, all over the world, and the Doctor gets help from an old organisation and the daughter of an old friend, as the Doctor comes face to face with the slow invasion. So join me next time for The Power of 3, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!